Okay class, this video is going to go over the machine buttonhole process. In this video, I'll be using the FAF Select 1520. We have a few different models of machine in the room. The other models have an actual easier buttonhole function, but most of our machines are the 1520, so I'm going to use that. Just to reference, Select 1520 right there. Let's take a minute and talk about the machine settings we'll need for the buttonhole. Remember, this is for the FAF Select 1520. We have a couple of other models, but the buttonhole function is easier on those. So let's talk about our settings. First, I want you to look inside the lid. See those buttonhole icons? They tell you what stitches we're going to use. We'll use the stitch selection A for the left side, we'll use the B for the bar tack, C for the right side, B for the top bar tack, and D for the anchor stitches. Now remember, that stitch selection correlates with your stitch selection wheel. Normally we stitch on an E for the straight and zigzag stitch, but we're going to change that. Since our first side of the buttonhole is for stitch A, I want you to rotate that to A. There you go. Now for this, you'll need to set your stitch width. You need to set it all the way at a 5. And your stitch length also needs to change. Where we normally keep that at a 3, I want you to roll it down low. You keep going and see that buttonhole icon? Anywhere in there should be good, but I like to set mine down towards the bottom so my stitches are nice and close together. Those are the settings that we'll need. To recap, we start with stitch selection A, good, stitch width of 5, and a stitch length down in the buttonhole section. Okay, we've got our settings all set the way we like, and we are getting ready to sew this buttonhole. But first we need to mark our fabric. To do this, you're going to need your sample piece of muslin. You're going to need the button. We're going to use this as our sample. You're going to need a pencil and a ruler. Now the reason you need the button is you need to know exactly what size to make the buttonhole. The buttonhole needs to be a little bit longer than the button is wide. So if your button measures a certain width, you need to make it a little longer. Here's how you measure the button though. I got my ruler, I've got my button, and you want to hold it up just starting at like a 0. I'm using this marking as my beginning. This is a little longer than a 1/2 inch, a little less than 5/8 of an inch. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 5 squares. So I want to make my button 3/4 of an inch long. My buttonhole, excuse me. That will accommodate this button quite nicely. So we're going to sew a 3/4 inch buttonhole on this sample. You can put your button and your ruler to the side because these machines have a great buttonhole foot that does a lot of the work for you. See these red gradations on the side? Each one of those is 1/4 of an inch. So for this sample, we're going to set it at 0, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. We'll make sure that's set up perfectly in a minute. And to mark our buttonholes, all we need to know is where we want the center of our buttonhole to be. It's going to be a line, but when you're marking buttonhole placement on a garment, you can just mark the centers, and these feet do all the work for you. So I'm just going to put a dot on my fabric. And that's what I want to be the center. Now, I'm going to roughly line that up, and I'm going to come in close and make sure my little red line arrow indicator is on my 3rd score mark. So right, see that one is 0, that one is 1/4, 1/2, 3/4. These aren't marked, but we know that each red mark is 1/4 of an inch. So I want a 3/4 buttonhole. I set my little red arrow at the 3/4 mark, and I'm going to drop my presser foot. My red dot, or my pencil dot, should be in the middle, left and right as well. And it is. We're pretty good. I'm going to do a little adjustment to line it up some more. And to adjust, you just raise that presser foot a tiny bit and slide your fabric around. I feel a little better about that. I think we're golden. So we're going to start. I've got my stitch selection at A, I've got my width at 5, and I've got my stitch length on the stretch stitch. We should be ready to go. So let's do this. A, we're going to do the left side of the buttonhole first. Here we go. moves and you get down to where the bottom of your window is, and that's long enough, then you switch your selection to the next step, which in this case is B. That does our bottom bar tack. Let's see how that looks. Taking a little wider stitch there, great. Got my bottom bar tacked. You only want to go through about 5 or 6 times. You don't need a ton there. Switch over to C. Then we're going to switch over to C on our stitch selection. Let's see what happens with that side. Oh goodness, sorry. It takes us back the other way, up the other side of the buttonhole. One more stitch selection change, back to B to do the top bar tack. And then finally, switch over to D to do the final anchor stitches. And our buttonhole is done. There we are. Now, I didn't use my hands when I used the A side, and it led to some troubles. As you can see, our buttonhole is not quite clear in the middle. You want space in the middle where you see the fabric. That way you can cut it open easier. But you get the general idea. Those are the mechanics of how to sew the machine buttonhole.